Listen to me.
No, you listen to me. You're not going to Atlanta. You're taking us to Colorado.
This episode really put a focus on the past, present, and future in a very interesting way. From seeing the beginnings of the relationship between X and Teri set in the past, to meeting a group of kids who have been surviving on their own and to me represent the future of this new world after the event. Now, speaking of the future, what's the meaning behind the visions that X experiences 3 times in this episode where he not only sees Teri from the past but also sees Link? We are back breaking down this second episode of Season 2 of Paradise. Now, on first view, you might not think much from this episode, but there are actually a ton of little details that speak within the larger picture of where the story might go. With all that being said, let's discuss this episode, full spoilers ahead. We pick up with Xavier dreaming of Teri, who's telling him to come to her, which hints at a monumental turning point of their relationship of how it all began. But reality crashes harder than Xavier's plane because he wakes up to find himself literally stuck in a tree after a brutal crash. Now, before we fully get an idea of the aftermath, we flash back to X in a plane desperately trying to communicate with anyone over the radio. Now, all of a sudden, X starts experiencing the exact same symptoms that we saw Link having in the previous episode. Now, as I said in my previous breakdown of episode 1, maybe there are some side effects to being exposed to certain areas, in this case that being Arkansas and Memphis, maybe where the air and the atmosphere causes these tense headaches and nosebleeds. But if that is the case, my next question would be, why have only X and Link been experiencing this? But then this is where things get interesting. Xavier experiences what I'm calling a vision from the future. I say that based on the fact that we see that his hair is longer and also he has a beard, which we haven't seen this look from him from the entire show because he's mostly been clean shaved. And one would think that his beard grew during his journey on the surface. Now in this vision, he's following a man who's later to be revealed to be Link, who's sporting that shaved beard we saw him get for Annie at the end of episode 1. Again, to me, clearly this places both of them in the future. We see this vision 2 more times later in this episode, and it looks like they may be somewhere underground or maybe even in the bunker by the looks of it. Now, Paradise has always been grounded in reality, but if this is X experiencing a future event, are we about to dive into some sci-fi? Did exposure to whatever X and Link have been around give them future sight? I know it's a stretch, but my next question would be, did Link experience the same vision of X when he experienced his symptoms? The way it was cut, it made it feel like X was experiencing this, not just us as an audience maybe seeing some foreshadowing. I don't know, what do you guys think? Is this a future sci-fi vision or something else entirely? Now, I'll have more thoughts about this that we'll discuss a little bit later. Now, back in the present day, feeling like he might not make it during this hailstorm, X makes a desperate Mayday call in hopes to find Teri. Now, he tells her that the kids are safe in the bunker and even gives her coordinates to the location of the bunker, which might not have been a good idea to share over the radio, but we see X thinking that this might be his last I love you to his family before making the actual impact. Now we see X trying to leave the plane, but he's in pain after hurting his knee. As he slowly pulls himself through the plane, he falls and re-injures it. This immediately cuts to a flashback in 2004 at a Secret Service training center where we see X injuring that exact same knee for the very first time. The doctor is preparing to snap it back into place with sedation. Flash forward to present day, and X is about to perform this same agonizing procedure on himself without any sedation, completely feeling every ounce of pain. Now, as he's about to start, a little boy who reveals his name later in the episode as Daniel appears and covers X's mouth to be quiet. This kid goes through X's bag, most likely looking for food and resources, but he notices a picture of X's kids. Now, as Daniel is doing this, we can see X takes the map of how to find Teri and he hides it in his pocket. Keep that in mind for a little bit later. Now, Daniel continues to tell X to be quiet, as off in the distance, there are 2 men slowly approaching them. Daniel, having spent more time in the outside world, he takes X's belongings to hide, and he offers X a hand and a stick as they gather together to hide behind a rock. Unfortunately, the unknown men take supplies, including weapons, from the plane, and they run off after the hailstorm returns. Now we watch as Daniel takes X to his boat that serves as one of his homes, where inside X finds Daniel's little sister and his friends. Now the rest of this episode cuts back and forth between present day X and 2004 X, so since the next scene is in the past, let's break down all the details for a bit and tie it back to the present after. Now, in 2004, we find X after his knee surgery, and he's in good spirits, but he's about to be in better spirits because this whole flashback is where X meets his wife Teri for the first time, as she was his roomie in the hospital and she was awaiting surgery as well. Now, this might not be anything, but Teri gives X her green jello after overhearing him complain about his favorite preferred flavors. Let's pause for a quick prediction for possibly a very beautiful moment between these two characters. I would love for this to happen when they are reunited at some point this season, where we'll find X who's close to finding his wife, but he hasn't found her quite yet, but then all of a sudden, a green jello container hits X and it's Teri. Or to elaborate on this idea, we can maybe find a situation where he finds empty green yellow containers of Jello while he's looking for his wife, and he knows he's getting closer to her because she's leaving these behind like breadcrumbs in order for him to find her. Obviously, he'll know that that's a reference to when they first met. Now, back in the flashback, we see that X is possibly in good enough shape to maybe go home and leave from the hospital that day, but after meeting Teri for the first time, he decides to stay behind, and he tells the nurse that his knee is really hurting and he wants to stay longer. Now we watch as X continues his pursuit with Teri, but she's got other things in mind besides flirting with her roomie. Now Teri shares that she's studying to get her doctorate in cell molecular and organismal biology. This being the first time that we actually got a better understanding of what Teri actually does as a scientist. Now I just mentioned a future episode prediction, and here's another one. While studying, it's mentioned that one of her cards had Acmanita phthalides, which is also known as the death cap. It's a deadly poisonous mushroom. Now my prediction being, could we see this mushroom come into play at some point this season where Teri or maybe X uses this poison to kill another character? Now going back to her expertise as a scientist, I find it interesting knowing that Teri specializes in the study of cells and DNA and biology that has to do with evolution. I say all that to say that since the show started, I always wondered what Teri did as a scientist and why was it so important for her to go back and forth to Atlanta. Now, for those who don't know, the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, is actually located in Atlanta. I don't have my theory fully thought out quite yet, but I just have a feeling that Teri will be a much larger character in Resetting the World, and maybe she has possible ties to Sinatra, but also possibly Link, saying that there's something very dangerous in the bunker from episode 1. I really think that we'll be learning that Teri may have some secrets, maybe some dark, mysterious secrets from her past that will be uncovered this season. Now, X is putting on his charm and takes interest in her work and offers kind gestures like covering her feet with a blanket. He is slowly gaining her interest and it's really working on her. But Teri is very upfront about how this relationship could go. As we know, she is career driven and lets X know that marriage and kids aren't in the foreseeable future for her, but we know that X is persistent and spoilers, they do get married and they have kids. With that last point, I do wonder if we'll see more of Teri and X in the past as they fall in love as future flashbacks for the rest of the season. From seeing how they dated and eventually her listening to her heart over her career by breaking her rule by marrying X and having kids, again, I think this is something we'll probably see as the season goes along. Now, the turning point comes when Teri has a complication during her surgery and temporarily loses her sight. She's terrified, but X is right there, comforting her and promising that her sight will return. He even stays overnight after being discharged just to make sure that she isn't alone. And all of this is where her armor cracks and she starts to let X in. I gotta say, with these flashbacks, watching them fall in love in the past while X desperately searches for her in the present makes those scenes hit even harder. Again, we know that eventually she's gonna break her no marriage and no kid rule, but seeing the foundation of that trust built on green jello and conversations in the hospital was really the heart of this episode. Now, we'll come back to this at the end and tie it together with what's going on with X in the present. Now, before moving on to the rest of this breakdown, let's take a moment to hear from today's support, and that's Factor.
Look, I'm going to be honest with you all. I am not a fan of going grocery shopping. It is so time consuming. I have to shop at so many different stores because one store doesn't have the one thing I need. It is just one giant headache for me. So that's where Factor comes in. Whether it's cold days or you have big goals and you have no time to cook, Factor makes healthy eating easy with fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs. So eat well without planning or cooking. Look, for me, it's all about convenience and it's all about having options, and that's why I believe Factor is such a perfect fit for my lifestyle. Quality, functional, functional ingredients including lean proteins, colorful veggies, whole food ingredients, and healthy fats. No refined sugars, no artificial sweeteners, no refined seed oils. Meals that fit your goals and schedule, healthier eating, calorie management, more protein. The variety is so great because you have 100 rotating weekly meals to keep things fresh and delicious throughout the winter. Options include high protein, calorie smart, Mediterranean diet, GLP-1 support, and ready to eat salads. Plus, the new Muscle Pro collection supports strength and recovery. And I mean the convenience alone. It's always fresh, never frozen, ready in about 2 minutes, no prep, no stress. Right now for me, I'm trying to get back on my healthy kick, so having the available proteins and having the vegetables and the whole foods ingredients is just a perfect fit for me. So head over to factormeals.com/moviefiles50 off and use my special code moviefiles50 off to get 50% off and a free breakfast for 1 year. Again, that's factormeals.com/moviefiles50 off. And again, use my code moviefiles50 off to get 50% off and free breakfast for an entire year. Eat like a pro this month with Factor. Now, this is for new subscribers only and varies by plan, and 1 free breakfast item per box for 1 year while subscription is active.
Meanwhile, back with X and the surviving kids on the boat, most likely not having the best options of food available, we watch as the kids go through X's things and they eat his food. Now, at this point, none of these kids have verbally spoken a word, but they seem to have their own way of communicating in silence in order to keep a low profile from any outside threats through using hand gestures and eye contact. X still needs to take care of his knee and remembers how it was done back when he originally injured it, as we see Daniel smartly has X wait till the loud noise and the thunder hits, that way he's not hurt by the outsiders, as he pops it back into place and we watch as X passes out. Again, it's here that we flash back to the past with Teri and him, but also being followed by Link, which is the second time that we see this in this episode. Now, I want to know when X and Link are experiencing this symptom, it is the same visual effect of like almost a glass or mirror shattering when they have these issues. And again, this was seen in episode 1, but it was also seen a few times back in season 1 as well. If I'm not mistaken, I remember seeing this effect whenever one of our characters, for example, Samantha, would think about or recall events from the past, so I don't think that that is a coincidence. To me, it's heavily implying a shared connection or perhaps a common symptom tied to these memories or experiences. Again, if my memory serves me right, I think we saw X have this experience in season 1. We also saw James Marsden character as a president have this. We also saw Samantha have this. And of course, in this season so far, we saw Link experience the same thing. Now, X shares his name with the kids very slowly and very loudly, not knowing if the kids can understand him, but it's here that Daniel speaks for the first time. He introduces X to his little sister and his friends who don't talk much. It's during this exchange that X learns that he's in Arkansas. He talks about his own kids, and Daniel opens up about his heartbreaking journey as well. They were a part of a travel team that lost their entire families during the event, and they have been fending for themselves ever since. It's truly gut-wrenching seeing the toll that the world has taken on these kids. One of them even consistently opens and closes their eyes, trying to imprint their parents' faces so they don't forget. Man, these kids have seen things that no kids should ever see at this point in their lives. But they have adapted to the horrors of the new world over the past 3 years. One of them casually asks X if they can have his jacket after he dies. This being a brutal reminder that for them, it's pure survival. Anyone outside their small group is essentially a temporary resource or more likely already dead. Now we watch as X invites Daniel and the others to the bunker back with him once he finds his wife, but Daniel tells him that they actually like it where they are. Now it's important to keep this in mind because X tells him where the bunker is and promises him that it's a safe place. Now Daniel tells him that they also have other places to go when it gets too cold, so again, remember that for a little bit later in this breakdown. Now, in a tender moment, possibly for the first time, these kids have experienced genuine kindness from an adult, not trying to exploit or kill them, as X reads James and the Giant Peach. We see Daniel finally gets to be a kid again, peacefully drifting off to sleep on X's shoulder. Now outside, X hears activity. One of the men who found his plane earlier, now armed with X's own gun, confronts him. He realizes X isn't surface hardened, having clearly spent the last 3 years sheltered. Now, the man reveals that he's actually been tracking the kids for the last few days, and driven by primal need to protect, we see X attacks him. Now, despite his injured knee, we see X fights like a father defending his own, and he ultimately gains the upper hand and kills the man. Now, the kids see this, and instead of acting in fear, they actually bury the man's body into the mud. That way no one can find the body and possibly could be looking for them. Now, how in the world would these kids know to bury this man in the mud? To me, this suggests that they had to bury others before, perhaps their loved ones or possible other threats. Which, to that point, we know that this man wasn't alone, so I wonder if the other men, if they were maybe a part of a larger group, which now has weapons to their disposal, if they'll put 2 and 2 together and they're gonna go looking for X if they find the body. Now, Daniel's sister walks up to X and says that he's badly hurt, and it's here that X realizes that he's been stabbed and he passes out yet again. The next morning, Xavier wakes up, bandaged up, but alone. The kids are gone, his bag is gone, his supplies are missing, they took it all. The only thing left is the picture of his kids and the words left on the table saying sorry. Now, I could be wrong, but as I said earlier, X put that map of where he can find Teri in Atlanta in his pocket, so I would imagine he still has that information on him, but based on his reaction, maybe they took it out of his pocket. Regardless if he has the map or not, which I guess it is important if he has the map, but either way, without his other gear, his journey to find his wife is going to be extremely hard. Now, backtracking a bit about the location of the kids. Again, remember, Daniel said that they have other homes, so did they just simply go to their other home still in Arkansas or maybe somewhere in Memphis, or are the kids going to make a journey to the bunker? Either way, I don't think this is the last time we're going to see these kids. I feel like they will return in some capacity because their presence in this episode, in my opinion, represented hope in the dark world that they're in, and they represent the future of the new world. Now, dehydrated and recovering from both a knee injury and after being stabbed, we see X returns to the crash site and he starts calling out his wife's name, but his body has gone through way too much and he falls out yet again. It's here that we tie back to the end of episode 1 where Annie arrives and she puts him on his horse to take him back to Graceland. Now, as we come to the close of this episode, we go back to the flashback where X is still by Teri's side, helping her through her recovery, but as time goes by, we see that eventually she regains her sight. Now, back to present day, we find X waking up in Graceland. Now, X tells Annie about his kids and Teri and the bunker, which immediately, once he said the bunker and the location of the bunker, that caught Annie's attention because obviously that's where Link's headed. As we see the flashback of the past and also the vision from the future for the 3rd time in this episode, but this time around we have full context of at least one of the visions. The past flashback vision comes from where Teri told him to come to her after she fully regained her sight and we watched them kiss for the very first time. But it's also here that we see the future sight where Link turns around and we can see it's his full face. Now, I already shared my crazy theory earlier in this breakdown about this maybe being a future vision, but there's something else I'm thinking about. There has to be a reason why X is remembering his first kiss with Teri, but also seeing Link at the same time. Could this vision from the future be Link taking X to Teri, that being the reason that it was shown to us 3 times in this episode? Putting my crazy sci-fi mind vision theory aside for a second, maybe the idea is the show showing us as an audience that in the future, X will be seeing this from his point of view, but we're going to be seeing this is again where Link is maybe taking him to his wife. Now, X is desperate to get to Atlanta, obviously to find Teri, but for the first time since meeting her, we see a different side of Annie. The sweet mother-to-be is holding her gun, and we see X is handcuffed to the bed, and she demands that he be her guy to go find Link, the father of her child. Man, talk about crossroads, right? Both X and Annie are being pulled in opposite directions by the people they love. Now the question is, will X convince her to make a detour to Atlanta first, promising to go to the bunker next? Or will Annie stand her ground? Now I do want to talk about how this episode really hammered home X's new reality. It almost felt like this episode's purpose was to deconstruct X, and if you think about it further, after 3 years of being in a controlled environment in the bunker, he's now out in the wild and he has zero control. He got injured and nearly died more times in this single episode than he did in the entirety of season 1. He needed help. He needed an SOS, a Mayday, which was the title of this episode, and we have to watch as he's going to have to adapt to survive to find his wife. What I also found fascinating is the parallel between Annie and X. Both have been somewhat sheltered for the past 3 years and now find themselves looking for their loved ones in a different world. Now, this episode, much like episode 1, to me truly shines on a second rewatch. The themes of hope, love, compassion, and the profound need for human connection are everywhere in this episode, especially in the beautiful flashbacks that we got between X and his wife. Again, like I said earlier, I suspect that we'll see more of Teri in the past, more so than we see in the present timeline. And I think that's going to happen because it's going to really build on the emotional payoff for when they eventually do reunite, rather than them finding each other anytime soon. Now, another thing that really stood out to me about this episode was the focus on the kids and them showing their resilience despite the odds being against them, surviving the whole time without adults. And like I said, I do feel like we'll be seeing them again, but the question is, will that be in the Memphis, Arkansas area, or will it be at the bunker? Now, like I said in my episode 1 breakdown, I'm watching these episodes in real time, so I have no idea what other people are thinking, and I'm so curious about how people are feeling so far as the pacing goes in these first 2 episodes. I mean, if you think about season 1, episode 1 came swinging out of the gate, right? With all the mystery and all the stuff being revealed. But so far, episode 1 and 2 of this new season has taken a different approach in its storytelling. Again, episode 1 of season 1, we found out about the president dying, we found out about the bunker. But so far, these first 2 episodes have been very character driven. I'm about to watch episode 3 now, so we'll have to circle back to this conversation, but I do believe them dropping all 3 episodes on the premiere night and telling this story and the way that they're doing the pacing is on purpose. But if I were to guess, I would imagine that episode 3 probably takes us back to the bunker, but let's find out. With that said, this will conclude my breakdown of episode 2 of season 2 of Paradise. I would love to hear you all's thoughts of this second episode, what worked, what didn't work, what thoughts, theories, predictions do you all hope to see in not only episode 3, but in the episodes ahead, in the weeks ahead. So please leave your thoughts in the comments below, whether you're watching this on YouTube or if you're listening to this in podcast form. Let's talk about all these things in the comments section. Again, episode 1 breakdown is available now, but by the time you're watching or listening to this, episode 3 will be available to watch or listen to as well. With that being said, thank you all for listening or watching this breakdown of episode 2 of season 2 of Paradise. Like, share, comment, consider sticking around by subscribing to the channel today. Again, you can check out my episode 3 breakdown, which will be available in the screen now and also in the description. You all be safe, and I'll see you all soon.